We're good? Okay, I'll get my recorder going too. All right, why don't we get started? It's a nice day out. I'm sure you all want to get back outside as soon as you get a chance. For the record, it's August 14th, 2018, 1 o'clock p.m. We're in the Kenmore City Council meeting chambers. I'm Phil Alvarez, the hearing examiner for Kenmore, holding hearing today on file number PRJ 170036, which is an application to divide a piece of property into 18 lots. By state law, Kenmore, like every other city and county, is not allowed to approve a subdivision unless it can make a finding that there is adequate infrastructure to serve that subdivision. That includes streets and open spaces and sidewalks and sewer and water and just a whole long laundry list of things, all the way down to safe walking conditions to and from school. And like all other cities and counties, Kenmore has incorporated those standards into its code, along with several others addressing things like tree retention and, of course, design standards for the streets. And, there's a lot of regulation in Kenmore that the developers have to deal with before they can actually get to the point where staff is willing to make a recommendation for approval, as they are in this proceeding. Subdivision review is a two-step process. Preliminary plat is, as its name implies, it's kind of preliminary. We're just looking at the overall design to make sure there's adequate space to accommodate all the necessary design features that are required by city code. Once preliminary plat is approved, then the applicant has to go forth and essentially put in all the infrastructure that is required by city code. They got to put in the roads and the sidewalks and the pipes and all that kind of stuff. And once they do all that, they have to go back to the city for a second approval called final plat approval, which is actually just a check by the city to make sure that all that infrastructure has been put in as required. And the final plat is approved, then they can go ahead and start selling lots. That's the big carrot at the end of the stick for the developers, is they can't sell any lots until they get that final plat approval. Only one public hearing, though, is held on this whole process, and that's the preliminary plat, and that's what we have today. And by city code, I have to make a final decision on that, and that's just appealable to Superior Court. So, if you want to get anything in the record, that needs to be considered for this development, now is the time to do it in today's hearing, because once the hearing is closed, by state law, I can't consider any new evidence except under very limited circumstances. I mean, I even have people come up to me as people are filing out of the room and say, "Oh, I forgot to give you this letter, Mr. Examiner," and I can't take it at that point because people left the room who might have wanted a chance to respond to it. And state law is very particular about the fact that they want an even playing field in these kind of situations where you're all entitled to know all the information that I, as decision maker, gets to see. So that means I don't get to talk to staff before the hearing to find out about the project. All the information I get, you have to know about, so you have a chance to respond to it as well. It's called ex parte contacts if I have any communications outside the hearing, which is why I'm not allowed to talk to any of you after the hearing is closed as well. Now, under the city code and the hearing examiner rules of procedure, all testimony has to be taken under oath. So if there's any chance any of you may be saying something today, I need you to stand up right now to be sworn in. And just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in this proceeding? All right, perfect, thank you. That's the only calisthenics I'll make you do today. But, except unless if you want to talk, if you don't have a microphone in front of you, when it's your turn to speak, you'll need to go to the microphone right there. State your name, how to spell it, so we get that right, and then go ahead and make your comments. It's very important you get in front of a microphone, because if this decision is appealed, the reviewing court will require a transcript of the proceedings, and they'll make us do all this over again if we can't have an exact recording of everything that was said. Also, after the hearing, I go back and review the recording as well to make sure that all your comments are addressed. And speaking of which, I also wanted to express appreciation to staff for doing such a good job in responding to your written comments. That's not required by state or local law. It's not something that all cities do, and I think it makes a big difference when staff makes such a great effort to respond to all comments made. I mean, that helps me review it, and that probably helps you all as well understand the process. So the format is we'll start off with a presentation from staff, and that's Samantha Loyick, I guess, you're going to do it for us? Yeah, she'll explain the overall project to us all. Then we'll move on to the applicants. They get a chance to make a pitch in support of their project. And once the applicants are done, then we'll go to general public comments, and I'll go through the sign-in sheet in the order there, and then after I'm done with the sign-in sheet, I'll just ask if anyone else out there wants to talk, and that'll be your chance to speak. And as I said, when you do get a chance, just go to the microphone there go ahead and make your comments. Sometimes when we have large crowds, we impose like really strict time limits of 3 minutes per person, just because we want to make sure that people don't have to wait for 4 hours to be able to speak. But today looks like we have we don't have a whole lot of people, so I'm just setting the limit at 5, and hopefully you can do it in 5. I'll be pretty flexible about that. Let's see. I think I've covered just about everything. So with that, the other thing too, I guess I should cover is the exhibits. Again, I can only look at the information that is all available to all of you, and of course that's the testimony today, and then any documents that staff gave to me ahead of the hearing, and also any exhibits that are presented during the hearing. And I have a staff report, and that's on the city's website, right, Samantha, that anyone can look at. And it also has a list of documents that are appended to it on page 19 that includes the arborist report, the sewer and water availability letters, police department, fire department review, engineering approval, drainage, traffic assessment. And essentially those are appendices A through N. Does anyone have any objections over the staff report and all of its attached exhibits being admitted as Exhibit 1? Okay, then I'll admit that as Exhibit 1. If any of you have any additional documents you need admitted, just ask if you can submit it to the record. I'll ask if there are any objections, and we'll probably get that in for you. So with that, I think, Ms. Loic, we're ready to go, so go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'm Samantha Loic. I am the Associate Planner for City of Kenmore, and I'm acting as the lead for all land use applications. With me today is John Forba. John's an engineer from PACE, and they are a consultant for the city. And then I also have Terry Bielenberg, an engineer for the city, and Debbie Hohenstein, who's our code compliance and building inspector. So we have them here in case any questions come up in their areas of expertise. So the project before you today is a Type 3 land use decision. It's an 18-lot residential subdivision. It's located at 7624, 7636, 7722, and 7724 Northeast 165th Street. The address is also provided in the staff report. One note to the staff report, one correction is on page 3. It says 7635. That's incorrect. That should read 7624. So I just want to note that. But the other information, so the address and the first page and the parcel numbers, those are correct. We refer to this project as Copper Lane, or the subject project or subject property. So as a Type 3 land use decision, there is public notification required. So that was with the notice of application, which is also attached as an exhibit. As part of that, there was a 21-day public comment period, and now we're making the recommendation to you. So it's just a summary of the proposal and the city's review of the proposal. I'm just going to step through. I have some notes here about the project, and just so you can kind of understand the city's thought process. So this project is 4 contiguous parcels, and there are existing single families which have recently been removed or demolished. The property is 2.95 acres in size, and it's located in the R6 zone. The R6 zone is residential 6 dwelling units per acre. And the property does not contain any environmentally critical areas or buffers. The proposal includes a new public access road with cul-de-sac that accesses Northeast 165th Street. So currently there are 4 driveways off 165th Street, and that will be reduced to 1. We're calling this Road A right now. The project also includes approximately 400 linear feet of new sidewalk along 165th, and also sidewalk within the internal roadway. There's a approximately 3,000 plus square foot recreation space that's within the project. That's Tract B. And a tree management and protection plan is on file and has been reviewed by the city for tree retention. And adjacent land uses in the area are all single family, are primarily from our research, all single family residential. Sheet C1.2 of Exhibit M, like Mary, illustrates the site layout really well. I think that that's a good reference going forward as we talk about site layout. So to talk about the Type 3 land use decision, we mailed out the public notification. Kenmore does a mailing of 1,000 feet around the subject property. So we mailed that out, and it was posted to on site as well. And these are exhibits C, D, and E. And during the 21-day comment period, we received 16 comments or requests to be notified, and then we received 3 additional afterwards. So in total, there are 19 parties of interest. And, sorry. So all comments that were received are considered by the city. You can see that in our responses. We forward it to the applicant and ask that the applicant respond as well. Some of them didn't require a response because they were either not questions or maybe unrelated to the project. So we did our best to go through those and determine really what questions were in there and how we could help answer those. The project was reviewed by a number of city representatives, so I reviewed it for the planning portion. It was also reviewed by our director and SEPA official, Brian Hampson, and civil engineers Zach Richardson and John Forba. The North Shore Utility District reviewed it for water and sewer requirements, and that was Tama Crenshaw. The fire department, Jeff LaFlamme is a fire marshal, he reviewed it. And Police Chief Horvath reviewed it for the Kenmore Police Department. And finally, Susan Rembold reviewed it for the transportation portion of the, she's in the North Shore School District. So this project came in April 6, 2017 as a pre-application. So we require Type 3 applications to have a pre-app. And after that, they had the intake. They made their formal submittal August 29th, 2017. So they took the comments that we provided and then revised things as necessary. After their intake, the city determined the application was complete on September 19th of that year, and that becomes the completeness date or the vesting date. The notice of application went out on September 28th. It was mailed 3 days prior to that, and the 21-day comment period ended on October 19th. The city completed 3 different reviews, so we reviewed it. This is all in page 2 of the staff report. We reviewed it, sent it back, reviewed it again, sent it back, and then the 3rd review, we had no additional comments. And we felt that everything was addressed by the applicants successfully. So going back to well, we can just go over the review, I guess. So the review that took place, I know that one of the public comments in there was about SEPA. So our SEPA official did determine that it was SEPA exempt based on KMC 1935-060A1, which just says 20 lots or less are exempt. So for the planning review, I reviewed the planning and the density requirement, the R6, this project is 6 dwelling units per acre. The calculation comes out to 17.7 and that rounds up to 18. So in our code says that 0.5 or above for this many lots rounds up. So we rounded that up to 18. And this is the base density. It's actually not the max. The max density could be achieved by using things like affordable housing. So they're achieving the base density. The city finds that the project complies with the Land Division Code, which is KMC Title 17. It includes general layout standards and submittal requirements. We'll see a lot of that at the time of final plat submittal. And just as clarification for the 2 processes, so we have preliminary now, And then we're going to have an engineering permit after this, which is for all the site work. And then we'll have the final plat. And so the engineering permit is, for the city, it's like a second step, because everything construction-wise for the infrastructure is under the engineering permit. And they really can't move forward with the final plat until that the engineering permit's all wrapped up. So the project, as they have proposed, complies with the zoning standards, including but not limited to density, setbacks, impervious surface percentages and limitations, minimum lot sizes, light and glare, site distance requirements, recreation, landscaping, and parking requirements, and tree management and protection requirements. The project, one of the conditions for the city is to condition the project to that it will be required to pay park impact fees. And the 2018 rate is $2,650, but it's not vested to this rate. It's actually based on the amount at the time of building permit submittal, but just as an idea of how much about that is. And the 3 existing residences, we've recommended that they get credit for that because it's a net increase of 14. And the same holds true for the school impact fees and traffic impact fees. We've recommended that they receive that credit as well, and that's just a standard procedure for Kenmore, and it's in Title 20. Okay. Surface water and road standards were reviewed by our engineer. So the reason we have kind of 2 engineer reviews is because it was started by one engineer, Zach Richardson, who is no longer with the city, and so it was taken over by our consultant, John Forba. And then following this, at the time of engineering permit, our newly hired city engineer will review the engineering portion and do the inspections moving forward. So for surface water, the project has found that they comply with the KMC 1335, which adopts the 2016 King County Surface Water Design Manual. And the associated exhibits to support that decision are M, like Mary, O, and P. Each of these demonstrate compliance with surface water requirements. The road standards was reviewed for compliance with KMC 1250, which adopts the 2016 Kenmore road standards. Compliance is demonstrated through exhibits M, like Mary, and N, like Nancy. And this was also reviewed by the engineer. And the city is recommending that there's an engineering permit requirement, as there is with any other project, so that we can review the construction level details to confirm. Since this is preliminary, we have to confirm that the construction level is consistent with what they proposed here. Traffic impact fees, the 2018 rate is approximately $9,600. Again, they wouldn't be vested to that. That's just an idea for cost. Water and sewer is served by the North Shore Utility District. So this application was sent to the North Shore Utility District, or NUD as we call them, NUD. And they reviewed the application and recommended approval. They have water and sewer availability, and they require their own separate permit. And so the city coordinates with North Shore Utility District to ensure that the applicant has obtained those permits and then installed the services and that they've been inspected. So at each level, the review, engineering permit, and final, we will send it to the utility district to confirm that they approve of each of these steps. And that just helps us with our communication with the district to make sure they're complying with their standards as well. The North Shore School District reviewed the project for safe walking conditions. The district recommended that the project installs or construct sidewalks along the frontage, which this project is, and that contributes really to, this is going to be an important feature in the neighborhood for 400 plus feet of sidewalk that will be installed in that area. In the staff report, it shows that children walk, just a moment, on page 14, well, 13 and 14, is that, so Arrowhead Elementary, North Shore Middle School, or I think it's actually, yeah, North Shore Middle School and Kenmore High School. Children will walk only to high school, but there are bus stops for the elementary and middle school, and those are noted on the image that's on number 14. There's a little school bus that's circled. These are subject to change, so when the school district sees that there are sidewalks, new sidewalks, they might change these. So we just show you where they're at right now, and then it's up to the district every year. They could possibly change it. But this will certainly add there's no sidewalk right now, and so that will help students safely get to a bus stop. Kenmore High School is a 17-minute walk, so they've got a little ways to go, but the sidewalk will contribute to Northeast 165th Street for walking conditions. The project will be subject to the city recommends the project subject to the school impact fees. The 2018 rate is $10,600 per dwelling unit. Again, they're not vested to that, but just for information. Fire and police, the project will be served by the North Shore Fire Department and the Kenmore Police Department. The Kenmore Police Chief and the North Shore Fire District, Fire Marshal, both reviewed the applications. The police chief noted that they can absorb the new new dwellings as part of that the project will propose. The police also, I spoke with the police chief, and he said all projects in Kenmore they'll continue to absorb, and they're just kind of notified as that, and they adjust their staffing levels as needed to accommodate the city population. The fire marshal had some specific conditions. One is that all the single families are equipped with a fire sprinkler system. This is in Kenmore, I believe it was in 2012 that this was adopted for all new single families. So it's not unique for this project, but it is a requirement. And that he said, Mr. LaFlamme noted that a fire hydrant is required between lots 16 and 17. The exact location may change on that, just depending on as the engineering permit plans come in, the fire marshal will review those again. But that's where he's kind of preliminarily thinking that it will be. All of the conditions and all of the conditions in the report are based on the findings. Without going over all of them, I think that just all the people who have reviewed the application in their various areas of expertise have certainly provided comments, and the city has tried to stay in contact with anybody with questions on this project, even if it's outside of the notice of application period. We're here to help answer questions, and we have done our best to do that, to keep an open dialogue on this project. So the city respectfully recommends that the project be approved subject to conditions by the hearing examiner.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Lawyer. Yeah, glad you mentioned the SEPA issue. I noticed that there were some public comments related to that. I do need to clarify that I have no authority under state law to review the staff's decision on that. The state law only allows appeals of decisions made under the State Environmental Policy Act to a couple types of staff decisions, and whether or not a project is exempt isn't one of them. So that's something you could only address in a judicial appeal. With that, let's move on to applicants. Is there anything you want to add at this point?
Leif Hermanson with Core Design. Thank you, Mr. Examiner, for having us today. We'll be brief in our comments. Wanted to thank staff as well for a great process. They worked real closely with us, were easy to get a hold of, and really just thoughtful in their process in coming up with this project. Wanted just to mention briefly that the applicant, Rick Burnstead, is a local builder. They've been building homes in this area for a very long time. They take pride in their neighborhoods and understand that they're a part of a community. and they do their best to integrate themselves into that community, understanding that those that are around, are living with this process as well. And so very open during construction, and we'll have contacts on site available for issues that arise, so that they're always in constant contact with the neighbors that are impacted by the development. We've reviewed the staff report. We have nothing to add to it or changes to request. We're in agreement with the staff report and the conditions. Don't have anything to change or add, and would also respectfully ask that you approve this project.
Okay, great. Now, did you bring your arborist today, or is the arborist present?
We did not.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, one question, I don't know if you can answer this, or maybe the staff. I know there are some neighborhood concerns about stability of their trees, and the arborist did an assessment of the potential damage to the root systems and found that wasn't a problem. But my understanding is, another issue sometimes with these is that if you remove a bunch of trees, that removes a windshield that could then destabilize adjoining trees. I mean, was that something that, that was addressed by the arborist at all, or?
Yeah, I know that whenever we look at these preliminarily, he'll look at wind throw and those issues, and most projects will have the arborist on site, especially when we're working near off-site trees, to make sure that those root systems that we're working in or near are not impacted. And then as we work on these trees, if there are any issues that arise during construction, he's there to say, now that we've taken these trees down and these are exposed, we may want to think about, removing this tree or doing something different.
Oh, okay.
And we'll work with staff on those, so that if an additional tree needs to come down because it presents as a hazard because of wind throw, we would either be doing replacement trees or something in that nature.
And also, as you probably know, there are some comments made about the fact that adjoining densities are a bit lower, and that's pretty evident from the plat maps that show the adjoining lot lines, that kind of thing. And I know that you, as the applicant, have said you're going to put up a 6-foot fence. Is that integrated into your proposed design drawings, or is that just, is that to be considered part of your proposal, or?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
It'll be a part of the during final engineering design, the landscape architecture plans that will be submitted to the city will show the location for the fence, the type of design, but they do a good job of fencing all of their projects and lot lines and all of that stuff. A lot of home builders don't do that, but.
So is it basically going to be the entire perimeter, except, of course, the roads and cutouts and things?
Yeah, so it would be the perimeter of, obviously the perimeter, and then up to the sides of the homes, and then gates and that type of thing.
Oh, okay. And also, I probably should have asked staff this, but you probably know too. I mean, does the Kenmore Code require any minimum open space beyond just the parking impact fees, or is the open space just a voluntary design feature by?
And staff can correct me if I'm wrong. I have the calculation in front of me. So the rec space is 45 square feet per lot.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. And we have 18 lots, so it's 810 square feet was the minimum required, and we're providing 3,057.
Oh, okay. So you are doing a little bit more there. Oh, okay. That's really nice to see. Let's see. And finally, and again, this is one maybe staff could answer instead, but it was mentioned there's a 17-minute walk to Inglemore High School. It sounds like there are no sidewalks. I mean, are there safe walking conditions all that distance, can you say, or is there enough shoulder to walk on? And
I'm assuming that the kid, and staff may answer that better, but I'm assuming that the kids in the area will walk currently, so I don't know what route they take.
So based on what the school district provided, the kids in the area walk to the high school currently, and to accommodate that road for this project, the school district thought that it would be appropriate to have frontage improvements just along the project.
Yeah, but I was curious about the rest of it. Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, actually, we'll require a developer to widen a shoulder or something off-site to make sure that it's safe for them to walk.
In the areas that I looked at, I looked closer to the site. Once they get to Simon's Road, then that's a main road.
Okay.
But as you're walking eastward from where the highlighted new sidewalk area is, there isn't sidewalks along that area.
Is there a shoulder or something to walk on there? Or,
no, there's a paved shoulder to the west,
I see.
but not immediately east. And I'm not sure how far, if you continue going east, where there becomes a paved shoulder.
And then on page 14 of the staff report, it has a little thing that says existing paved shoulder. Oh, okay, so that's existing. It's already there.
Yes.
And, all right. Okay, got it. Okay, good. That's real helpful. Thanks. All right, then. I guess we're ready to move on to public comments. Like I said, I'll start off with people who've signed in, and then once I'm done with them, I'll ask if anyone else wants to speak. So any of you who want to talk today will certainly have a chance. So first is Ken Groves, if you want to say anything. Hello, Mr. Groves. Come on up if you want to speak. And that's, for the record, G-R-O-H-S.
Yes, Ken Groves, Grohs.
Okay.
I live directly across the street from where the project is going to be instantiated. Several questions that I've been asked to front to the developer by neighbors that can be here today. One of them is the sidewalks you propose. Along the frontage, there is a drain culvert, and that drain culvert is very crucial to that neighborhood. About 5 years ago, I was driving down the street on 81st, and a 15-foot plume of water exploded out of the street due to a pipe breakage, and the drain culverts on both sides of 165th were basically filled to the max, and they were overfilled, and the flooding took down the whole street, including the surface of the road. So what is your proposal? It looks like the sidewalk that you're going to be putting in is going to directly impact that drain culvert in that area. Also in that area, there is 5 mailbox locations of several residences. What is your proposal to mitigate those mailbox locations?
Okay, and applicants, if you can answer all the questions when it's your turn to speak at the end of the hearing, and then Mr. Grove, if they don't answer all your questions, let us know.
One more question real quick.
Sure, yeah.
From the city staff or the developer, I have heard no allusion to the power requirements from from PSE. Has PSE been contacted to ensure that the required power is available and will not impact the rest of the residences in the area? That area is prone to several blackouts during the course of especially the wintertime, and the addition of 18 additional residences is going to severely impact the power in that area, and that's another thing we'd like to find out the answer to.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Grove?
That's it, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good questions.
Thank you.
All right. So as I mentioned, we'll have staff and applicant answer that when it's their turn to speak again. Next on the list is Jerry Wagner. Mr. Wagner, do you want to say anything? No? Okay. Mary Guay? Guay? No? All right. That's the sign-in list. Did anyone else want to say anything or participate today? Okay. Well, like I say, I mean, we've got a lot of Oh, sure. Come on up.
Powell.
Oh, okay. And that's P-O-W-E-L-L?
Yes, and she couldn't be
sworn
here.
in, Ms. Powell?
Yeah,
okay,
I did.
Great, yeah. And I'll just for the record, I'll say Mr. Groves was sworn in too. I don't think I got that in the record. So, all right. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Powell.
So we live about a block away from this development and are very interested in the overall plan in Kenmore because we see a lot of new construction happening right now, a major one on Simons Road with many houses, and just single families going up everywhere, in addition to the houses that are already on the market, the prices that are dropping, the houses that aren't selling. How are these houses fitting in with that sort of trend, let's say? And when you're looking at the environmental impacts, were any of the owls that are in the area considered in that? I know that there's spotted owls. They might not nest in this particular plot, but maybe around there, and all this construction may be disruptive to them. And I also was interested in what decibel levels for various times of day are going to be permitted, and what the proposed length of the project was going to be. I didn't really understand that from the paperwork. So I think that's all my questions.
Okay, all right. Now I'll let staff, you could answer the question about the owls, the decibel levels, and applicants about the market factors and the length of the project construction. All right. Okay, sir, come on up. Need your name for the record, too.
Hi, my name is Andrew Davis, D-A-V-I-S.
Okay, and you've been sworn in, Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I live immediately adjacent to the subject property. And I've been in communication with staff and Mr. Forba, who I believe is a consultant for the city, regarding a PSNE and cable television power pole located on the property. And so my question is, can the developer ensure that that pole will remain on the property? It exists immediately at the line between our two properties on the applicant's side.
Okay.
So my question is, will it remain there
Okay, I'll let the applicants answer.
on the
that.
applicant's property?
All right. On
Thank
the
you.
applicant's property, sure. All right. Anyone else before we move back on to staff responses? Okay, Ms. Lawyer, go ahead.
So Samantha Loick, City of Kenmore Planner. I will answer a couple of them, then I'll have John Forba, civil engineer with PACE, answer a few of the others. So regarding the, let's see, will you just jump in? You let me know. The culverts and the sidewalks, John will answer that. The mailboxes are reviewed by the postmaster, the Bothell postmaster, at the time of engineering permit. So if any of those have to be relocated, then the postmaster would require it. So they'll tell us what's required, but certainly if the sidewalks impact the existing mailboxes, they'll have to be relocated or consolidated with a new box.
So is that, do you know, is that done at the expense of the applicant or the?
It's for the applicant, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's part of the frontage improvements.
Yeah.
PSC is contacted at the time of engineering permit. So PSC is they've let us know that they're able to accommodate new growth in the area, and the process for letting them know that is through the engineering permit. And then the applicant is probably more familiar with that, or even John. Yeah, so the applicant's probably more familiar with that process, but essentially during inspections, we'll just verify that they've got their PSE permits and, you know, that everything's moving forward. And we also have PSE is a franchise utility in the city of Kenmore, so if they need to they have their own kind of permit process, so they're aware of the requirements for development. Regarding the owls, no, there are no wildlife or habitat areas of importance in this area. So there are no critical areas mapped or otherwise. I walked the property, and just based on all the information that I've received from the applicant, I didn't see any need for any additional reports or anything.
And just to clarify for the audience, the city has all its critical areas mapped in
Yes.
terms of where species that are protected are located, and they have lists in the code that identify what kind of species are protected and where they're located. And Ms. Lawyer is saying that none of that was mapped for this piece of property. So
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Also, just as the overall, I know the applicant's going to address this, but I didn't mention that the comprehensive plan designation is also R6 for this area. So these properties would be considered underutilized properties because they are below what our base density is. So the development of these properties brings it closer to what the comprehensive plan was imagining for that area.
So the property to the south is R4, right? Does it still have an R6 comp plan designation though? Or?
The property to the south, the properties going south are R4 because that area starts getting steeper.
I see.
And so if you look at the overall critical areas map for geological, you'll see that that area has steep slopes south, not on the subject property.
Okay.
And I will refer now to John Forba.
Hello.
Your last name? sir? What was it?
Forba, F-O-R-B-A.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thanks. So regarding the sidewalk impacting all the drains, I understand there's a ditch on the north side of the roadway that will be replaced with a new stormwater collection and conveyance system. So it will be replaced. And the plans and reports have been reviewed for consistency with the King County Stormwater Design Manual, which the city has adopted. As far as The working hours, that is defined by code, and in this area, Debbie knows better than I, but 7 to 7 during the week, and then Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 on Saturday, no work on Sunday. No work on Sunday or holidays. There's not been a noise mitigation plan provided. Typically, we do not see something like that for something like this with a standard residential construction. I think that the applicant can speak better to the length of time for the schedule. And then regarding the power pole, there is an existing power pole that will need to be relocated as it is in the area where the sidewalk is proposed. Needless to say, we will not be putting it on Mr. Davis. We will not allow anyone to put it on Mr. Davis's property. Typically, we will relocate it somewhere within the existing right-of-way, either behind the walk or within the planter strip.
So as far as you know, PSE doesn't have any easements on Mr. Davis's property?
I am not aware of that,
Because
no.
they could put it on it.
If there are easements, that would be a question for Mr. Davis if he has any easements.
Okay, all right. All right, okay, and just for the record, Mr. Forba and Ms. Loyick have been sworn in, so we'll now move on to applicants to answer the remaining questions and make any final comments you want to make. I take it that's it from staff, right? No other comments? Okay, great. So move on to the applicants at this point.
We'll kind of go from the top and kind of reiterate a few of the points. The drain system that it currently exists along the north side of 165th, we're going to pick that up in a pipe and basically bring it along the frontage. So our design, and we'll go through this through final engineering, will be sized to accommodate the existing flows and shouldn't impact that in any way. Mailboxes, again, that's through the postmaster. Typically what happens is the existing mailboxes that are not a part of our project, so those that are across the street, will be housed in a temporary location. So typically we'll put up some kind of structure that houses those mailboxes. And then depending on what the post office asks us to do, they may ask us to put them into a community mailbox. And if the neighbors are agreeable to that, that would be coordinated through the development. If they want to remain with their own existing ones, we'd find locations with the postmaster. As far as PSE, we don't have a lot of control over the design of what PSE does. We will send our design, so once we have final engineering drawings done, we'll submit those to PSE. They have their own in-house design that they do, and they basically send us back a plan that says, here's what we're going to do for your project to provide you guys with power and gas. Looking at the boundary topo survey, and we can look at this with Andrew, it looks as though that power pole is in right-of-way. So as was mentioned earlier, if PSC is going to relocate it, it would be relocated within existing right-of-way where it currently sits. It would just be moved, if it needs to be moved, to accommodate the new construction of a sidewalk. Let's see, and then the other one, as far as proposed length of the project, those are always tough with, we don't know what type of weather conditions we're going to get, what market conditions are going to be present, but for a project of this size, we would say approximately 24 months from, start to finish of being in and out of there. But again, it could go faster if we get great weather. It could be a little bit longer, it just depends on market conditions. I think those are all of the
Okay, everything the applicant wanted to say, great. Have all your questions been answered out there? You're okay. Oh, no. Oh, decibel. It's
Do you have a
Powell asked
prescribed
about decibel levels.
level for construction noise?
No, decibel level is not,
So that was Ms. Blessington for the record. And you've been sworn in, Ms. Blessington? Is that right? Okay. And Ms. Baker, did you think the recorder picked up her comments? Oh, good, good. All right. All right. And Ms. Blessington, one quick follow-up question on that is, has the city adopted the DOE standards, or is that just?
The state standards.
Yeah, yeah. Wish you had DOE was the one that put those together and put them in state law, so. All right, perfect. Anything else? Okay. Oh, sir.
Alan Caniff, Canniff.
Okay.
On the power poles, he's talking about one pole in the east-south corner of the development. There's 3 other power poles that go along there. Are they going to put that stuff underground, or are they going to move those power poles and they're still going to be there? Or
Okay.
how is the developer going to access the power to his development without going underground? Because all of his stuff will be underground, I'm sure, within the development, but is he going to eliminate those poles and put all that stuff
Okay.
underground?
I'll let the applicant answer that question.
That would be a city question.
Oh, okay.
I
All right.
think
Sorry.
that would be your requirement, whether or not you're going to make us underground. I don't think at least our preliminary plans are showing them just being relocated. So to me, the intent is to leave them and relocate them as necessary for the sidewalk.
Within the right-of-way.
Within the
So
right-of-way
most likely
still.
it'd be like you're pushing them out 4 or 5 feet or something, or?
The adjustment would be, it looks like, just based on these plans, that they would probably shift 2 feet to the north to clear the sidewalk.
All right.
Correct. That sounds correct to me.
Okay. All right. Mr. Forbes says that sounds correct.
As one minor clarification for Debbie,
Uh-huh.
her last name is changed to Hohenstein.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
I know you know her
Congratulations.
as Debbie Blessington, but
Yeah, it's been a while since
just
we
for
had
the
her.
record, so that in case it gets
Sure.
confusing when you're writing it up.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, then. I'll go ahead and close the hearing. As I said, I'm Kenmore's hearing examiner. Like just about every city in the west side of the mountains, anyway, has a hearing examiner these days. The reason why cities adopt hearing examiner systems is one major reason is for liability reasons. The courts are very particular. They demand that decisions be based on code criteria alone and nothing else. Political considerations are not supposed to factor into it. I mean, the courts have repeatedly said if you have a room full of people opposed to a project, if it meets the code, it must be approved. And if the city denies it anyway, then the courts will impose a few $100,000 in damages and make you prove it anyway. So they hire people like me. I work for 20 different jurisdictions who have expertise in applying the criteria that's in the code to make sure that those criteria are followed so that anyone who wants to build in the city is subject to the same standards and you treat it equally as anyone else who wanted to put something together. And having worked with these codes for a few decades now, I can tell you, especially when it comes to stormwater, that kind of thing, I mean, they're really good at mitigating impacts on neighbors. I don't know if you've seen the stormwater manual, but that thing is like, it's a mammoth encyclopedia of regulations that basically says you can't increase stormwater flows on adjoining property and that kind of thing. So when I hear concerns about stormwater, I'm fairly confident, that the code will address it. The one area that you typically will see things get maybe a little bit worse is simply traffic. That's something that our legislature has tried repeatedly to deal with it, but it comes down to dollars ultimately. What the legislature requires of cities and counties is this is where that term concurrency comes in. Those of you who are concerned about concurrency got a response from the city saying, well, it meets the concurrency standards. And the concurrency ordinance is what the city sets as an acceptable level of congestion within the city. And Kenmore's is a little different. The old-fashioned way, and more cities are going away from it, is what they call level of service, A, B, C, D, E, and F, where A is perfect driving conditions and F is terrible university district driving conditions where you sit at intersections for 10 minutes at a time. And basically the standards you want, of course, if you had your way, you'd all have LOS-A, right? But the problem is that the legislature makes you have a 20-year plan to fund that LOS-A. You can only make developers pay their proportionate share, and the city has to come up with the remainder, and there just usually isn't money there to do it. So they have to come up with something that's financially feasible, and that's why you'll see congestion standards that are, not quite A, and sometimes they're D or F in some communities even. So I'm not really familiar with Kenmore's concurrency standards, how flexible they are, but as I said, you probably will see a little more traffic from this project and others, but as long as it meets that concurrency standard, that's considered acceptable. I mean, and if you don't like the concurrency standard, that's something to take up with the city council. But as I mentioned, the council is saddled with some practical financial considerations that makes them, adopt something that in some cases is considered less than ideal. But, I mean, beyond that, it looks like, the developer here is putting in a lot more open space than required, and the trees have been addressed in pretty good detail. In some communities, they don't consider tree impacts at all. It's not something that they worry about, and it's good, the walking conditions to school. I mean, everything that had to be considered here was, and it looks like it was fairly well mitigated for the most part, and I think it's real good that the developer has agreed to put up the fence. That's nice to see. Every once in a while, I'll even require one. I don't know if I would in this case or not. There is that disparity in density, and that sometimes can justify something like a fence, but I don't have to worry about it because you guys are putting that in, and thank you for that. So overall, it doesn't look like a bad project, and I really appreciate all the comments you made. I'll do my best to address them all in my decision. It'll be in writing. And Ms. Loic, does the city send a copy of the decision to everybody, or just a notice that's available on the website? How do you distribute that?
We'll send a notice.
Okay, all right. And do they need to sign in the sign-in sheet basically to get that notice? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So
We'll send it to all the parties of interest and then whoever signed in.
Yeah. So if you haven't already said you want to be a party of interest and you haven't signed in, make sure you get in the sign-in sheet. I'll leave it right there for you to put your name and address there. So any other questions before I close up? And you have the applicant here, you have the staff here, and there's just one exit, so if you need to talk to them, now's your chance. So anyway, thank you for coming this afternoon, and we'll get that decision out in the next couple weeks. Thanks again.